News First. Main sponsor.
25% for 2 months, 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD.
More taxes were slashed on the general public of Sri Lanka today. Many other things also unfolded during the course of the day. Good evening, this is Primetime News on TV1. We've got the details of these stories and much more lined up for you tonight. But first, a look at your top stories.
Inland Revenue Bill passed in Parliament. Income tax between 6 to 36% for those who generate an income of over 100,000 rupees. Furniture for the office of the President in Parliament purchased by a private company. Parliamentarian Bulletin. Established in 1950, Sri Lanka Navy is the naval arm of the Sri Lanka Armed Forces and is classified as a vital defence force and is responsible for the maritime defence of Sri Lanka and her interests.
The general public were able to witness the spectacular put-on by Sri Lanka Navy during the celebration of the 72nd anniversary. Capital ships of Sri Lanka Navy were anchored off the Goldface Green on Friday, giving the public an opportunity to have a glance at some of the major ships of Sri Lanka's Navy. From its small beginnings, the Navy has etched its name in the annals of Sri Lankan history by its courage and commitment for the protection of the nation. In the run-up to World War II, the Ceylon Volunteer Naval Force was established in the country by the Naval Volunteer Force Ordinance No. 1 of 1937. Subsequently, the Ceylon Volunteer Naval Force was renamed as Ceylon Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve on the 1st of October in 1943. In the 1950s, the Navy sought to usher in a new chapter by establishing a regular naval force. Accordingly, the Royal Ceylon Navy was established by the Navy Act No. 34 of 1950 on the 9th of December 1950. Since then, the Royal Ceylon Navy has been entrusted with the sole responsibility of protecting the country's maritime space. Going from strength to strength, the Royal Ceylon Navy became the Sri Lanka Navy in 1972 when Sri Lanka became a republic. In the early 1980s, with the commencement of terrorist activities in the country, the role of the Navy, which had been a ceremonial nature until then, was transformed into a military role. Over the years, the Navy has been strengthened in terms of manpower and naval capabilities for the national task for eradicating terrorism from the country. As the first line of defense, Sri Lanka Navy played a praiseworthy role during the humanitarian operation which finally brought down the curtains on terrorism which scourged the country for nearly 30 years.
The Inland Revenue Amendment Bill that seeks to impose a 6% to 36% tax on the monthly income of those who earn over 100,000 rupees will come into effect from the 1st of January next year. The Inland Revenue Amendment Bill was passed in Parliament today with amendments.
The Value-Added Tax Amendment and Inland Revenue Amendment bills were passed in Parliament with a majority. A division was called for the third reading of the Inland Revenue Amendment Bill by the opposition, to which 79 votes were cast in favour of the bill and 36 votes were cast against. Monthly income of up to 100,000 rupees will be free from tax. However, incomes of over 100,000 rupees will be imposed a 6% to 36% tax. A person who earns 350,000 rupees a month will be subject to all tax brackets and will have to pay a tax of 52,500 rupees per month. Debates were held in Parliament regarding the date on which the new tax amendments should come into effect. Parliamentarian Harsha De Silva pointed out that the documents presented to Parliament show preparations to impose taxes retrospectively, disregarding the determination of the Supreme Court.
The Attorney General assured court that taxes won't be imposed retrospectively, but after reading the amendment I can see that this will come into effect from the 1st of December. After we raised the question, the minister passed the message. He could have raised a point of order. We brought up this point of order. We can't make it valid on the 1st of December as we are having this debate. If you are truly working for the country, come and take up a responsibility in this ministry. I do not want a ministerial portfolio. I am working for the country. I don't get anything special for doing this. That is not the issue here. The issue is, why has the 1st of December been mentioned here?
The bill was amended to allow for the new tax scheme to come into effect from the 1st of January.
We are at a point where we are waiting to enter into an agreement with the International Monetary Fund to stabilize our economy. Even they showed us the inefficiencies in collecting these taxes. The IMF and the World Bank has agreed to provide us with technical support in digitalizing the tax scheme. These institutions are providing us with the technical assistance. In 2019, after Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected to power, he gave tax concessions to the businessmen who supported him. The people did not get any benefit, and it clearly showed that the government has no plan. Taxes were reduced in 2019 and were increased in 2022. The government will have to face protests from the people. If people need to have faith, there needs to be a government that will be able to win the trust of the people. For that we need an election, and this parliament needs to be dissolved.
The number of parliamentarians who attended Parliament today to vote on the Inland Revenue Amendment Bill was discussed on the Dawasa program that aired on our sister channel, Sirasa TV.
79 votes were cast in favour and 39 votes were cast against. Where were the other parliamentarians in the opposition? Where are our representatives in Parliament? I would like to ask you about this as well. This is a time when the entire country is in pain and sorrow. Roshan, I just found out about these numbers. This is really saddening. This is a tragedy. These parliamentarians are paid not to stay back at their homes. If they cannot be present in Parliament when an important law is being passed, I think they should permanently stay back at home. This is the same for both the government and the opposition. If the opposition has done a mistake, I will open my mouth and say it. This is a tragedy. If all members of the opposition were present in Parliament today, they could have stopped this act from being passed.
The manner in which furnitures were purchased for the office of the President was discussed in Parliament on Friday.
By 11 a.m. on the 28th of July, several items were brought to this Parliament, but the Parliament has not made any purchases. I will table all of these receipts. A private company has paid for it. These items were sent to the office of the President. The President's secretary has signed these documents. I will table them as well. The reason for this is among the items that were brought was a luxury mattress. This mattress is in the office of the President. The mattress's thickness is more than a foot. As far as I know, no one sleeps in the office of the President. There is a serious issue as to who is sleeping in the office of the President. It either has to be the President himself or a member of his staff. I would like to propose to the Prime Minister to appoint several members of Parliament, and we will accompany them to go and see what has happened here. It will be good for the President's security as well as for the security of this House. Can items be brought in like this? Also, although the President said that he paid for conducting his swearing-in ceremony, it is this company that has paid for all of that as well. The then Prime Minister said that Arjun Mahendran is going for a wedding and that he will be back, but he has not returned to the country yet. This could be a similar incident. Arjun Mahendran blackmailed the then Prime Minister and travelled overseas, and this man could do the same to him, who is now the President. He might give mattresses, beds and chairs, and jump out of the country. You keep on speaking about this, but the speaker had taken a decision on this matter. He said that he will inquire into it and respond. You are not going to sleep on that bed, are you? I don't know if you are, because you're so keen on that. When there are so many other things to speak about, don't speak about beds. Instead, speak about the issues of the people. Since the day Parliament began, the President, Prime Minister and opposition leader had a bed to rest on. There are lounging chairs in the hall outside. The general public must not be angered like this. Ashu Marasinghe is a former member of Parliament and he has issued a statement saying that the furniture in the office of the President had been used for a long time and were in a state of decay. After a request was made to Parliament with regard to this matter, he has used his personal funds and donated these furniture to Parliament. A bed is not a luxury item. I table in Parliament the receipts that show that these items were brought using his private funds. I am
of their salary every year to the government as taxes, but there have been large-scale tax fraud that had taken place. We spoke about the sugar scam, the garlic scam, the coconut oil scam and the central bank bond scam. If you collect all the money that was lost to the government from these scams, you don't need to tax the professionals like this. They are attempting to bring this unjust tax scheme at a time when food inflation is at about 80%. Not only us, this tax policy will affect all private sector employees in the country.
මලෙන් රොන් ගන්නව නම් මල නොතලා රොන් ගන්න කියලා ඔය සියලුම සමනලින්ට අපි ආරාධනා කරනවා අපි කියන්නේ මෙච්චරයි බදු ගහන්න.
All we want to say is that taxes are being imposed even in developed countries, but the taxes must be fair. There is a serious situation where professionals are leaving the country. The government is saying it's all right if you leave, we will continue to impose more taxes. But if that is the case, then the government must bear the responsibility of the education sector in the country crashing. Do not play political games. IMF is a lending institution. When we borrow money from them, we do not have to do everything that they say. But what is this government doing? On the one hand, they are trying to sell national assets and find a solution to this issue through that.
The protesters dispersed after protesting for about an hour.
A group calling themselves the New People Front staged a protest against a statement made by parliamentarian Shanakin Rasamanikam. The protest was staged opposite the Chinese embassy.
Parliamentarian Rasamanikam, who is a citizen of Canada, used his parliamentary privilege to start a campaign called China Go Home. He is a person who came into Parliament after getting a few votes from the East. Can he get involved in these diplomatic matters? There is a government to do that. Therefore, I believe that he is working to fulfill the aspirations of the Americans. We are campaigning for the people and for our motherland.
A woman who arrived at the site of the protest voiced her objection against the protesters.
Meanwhile, the woman who voiced her opposition against the protesters outside the Chinese embassy took part in a protest along with several members of the Aragale opposite the Bribery Commission on Friday. The protest was organized by the Youth Power Against Bribery and Corruption organization. The protest was held in line with the International Anti-Corruption Day celebrated on Friday. The group attempted to lodge several complaints at the commission. 2 representatives were permitted to enter the premises of the Bribery Commission.
There is a place like this in this country, although it is not active. If the commission was really independent, all 225 members of parliament will be no more. All of them have allegations of bribery and corruption against them. One of the main slogans of the Aragale was "Give us back the money you stole." The Bribery Commission must be responsible for this.
The Supreme Court granted leave to proceed for 5 fundamental rights petitions over the attack on Gotago Gama on the 9th of May.
5 fundamental rights petitions were filed over brutal attack on peaceful protesters at the Gotago Gama protest site carried out by supporters of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna after they attended a meeting at Temple Trees. Several Aragale activists who were severely injured in the attack, including Lahiru Chanaka, filed the petition. Supreme Court Justice Vijit Malalgoda and Janaka De Silva granted leave to proceed for the petitions. The petitions will be taken up for hearing on the 22nd of June. Former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, parliamentarians Namal Rajapaksa, Johnston Fernando, State Minister Sanath Nishanta, Inspector General of Police Chandana Vikramaratne, and Senior DIG in charge of the Western Province, Deshabandhu Tenakon, were among the respondents named in the petitions.
News First with the people.
News First. Main sponsor.
25% for 2 months. 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD. A trusted place for your fixed deposit. Valuable FD. 25% for 2 months. 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD. The symbol of stability.
Welcome back to the news. The National Building Research Organization says that Sri Lanka's air quality is gradually improving. Sarath Premasiri, a senior scientist and coordinator for air quality, noise and vibrations at the NBRO, said the improvement comes with the wind flow.
The cyclonic storm Mandis over southwest Bay of Bengal pushed pollutants over the Indian peninsula towards Sri Lanka, leading to a heavy smog across many cities and towns. The air pollution in Colombo is some 25 to 30 cubic meters with a PM reading of 2.5, and this is a situation that is experienced these days. The AQI index over 100 is gradually improving. If there is a change based on the wind flow, we will inform you, and there is no need to fear this situation.
This situation improved significantly overnight. The exposure was not long enough to cause significant damage, but of course those who would have having the acute diseases, especially the lung and heart, better for them to go to the doctor and just assess the situation. Still we advise those elderly and the children and the people with comorbidities like lung and heart and other cancer, for them to be confined to premises as much as possible.
Sri Lankan opposition leader Sajith Premadasa highlighted an attempt being made to appoint more cabinet ministers.
A UNICEF report mentions that from July to October 2022, around 6.2 million Sri Lankans were affected by food insecurity. In addition, 2 out of 5 households in the country, that is 41.8% of the population, are spending 75% of their earnings on food. I wish to ask the Prime Minister, how is it that you are going to appoint more cabinet ministers? Child malnutrition, maternal malnutrition, electricity tariffs, cost of living is increasing, while you are trying to increase your numbers. What mandate do you have to do this?
Will the local government elections be held during the coming months? Speaking on the subject, parliamentarian S.M. Marikar said in Parliament that he will not allow for the elections to be postponed.
My old friend Harin Fernando made a statement regarding a speech that I had made. I would like to tell him that he was the person who said go home and 3 days later accepted a ministerial portfolio. When he was in the previous government, he said that Ranil cannot do this and said that Ranil was in politics even when Harin was in school and when his child was doing O-levels. Harin was the person who started the campaign from Badulla that Ranil, who is saying these things are said by the people who followed wrong policies and bankrupted the country. They took arbitrary decisions, spread racism and religious extremism and supported all movements to drag the country down the drain. They are the ones who are saying that we must unite. No matter what you say, we will not allow for this election to be postponed. They have taken a 2-week period to set some trap. We are not like these false patriots. We are people who truly love the country. That is the reason why we are not taking to the streets with the people. No matter if you send the army, the police or anyone else, we will get the people on the streets. But because we love the country, we are not doing that to prevent the country from becoming dysfunctional. But if you try to use this and postpone the elections, we will take action against that.
State Minister Diana Gamage filed a petition claiming that opposition leader Sajid Premadasa and Ranjit Bandara holding membership and positions of the Samvegi Jana Balawegya is against the constitution of the party. Accordingly, both Sajid Premadasa and Ranjit Bandara were ordered by the Colombo District Court to appear in court on the 25th of January 2023.
State Minister Diana Gamage had filed the petition via President's Counsel Udita Igalaheva with the Colombo District Court and noted that Sajid Premadasa and Ranjit Bandara continue to remain as members of the United National Party. As evidence, Diana Gamage had produced an affidavit from the General Secretary of the United National Party and a judicial process that Ranjit Bandara had taken to challenge disciplinary action by the UNP as evidence material in her petition. She says that Article 3 of Sub-Article 3 of Chapter 3 of the SJB Constitution notes that if a party member holds membership of another party, he or she will lose the membership of the Samvegi Jana Balawegya. She requests the court to deliver a ruling that both Sajid Premadasa and Ranjit Bandara holding membership of the SJB and holding posts of leader and general secretary of the SJB are illegal. Diana Gamage has also requested an order suspending those from holding the said positions under the examination of the petition is complete.
Ivan satutin inni wiring karala wiring kirwe Eslon polycon yodala.
For your safety and the protection of the wires used in networking and AC wiring, Eslon Polycon cable trunking.
This is a time period where the country is facing numerous economic challenges. Much attention has been drawn towards food insecurity as well. In the meantime, Sri Lanka has also fallen prey to drug abuse across the island. We now bring to you the first episode of a News First investigation into the issue. This report was filed by News First's Disal Kapuge.
The constant pursuit for money has left the society deteriorating day by day. When the north of the country is finally reeling back from the brutal 30-year-long civil war, a new war is brewing in the north. This is the war on drugs. We bring to you this investigative report to protect the public from this rising issue that affects us all. There is a sharp rise in the use of heroin, ice, marijuana in the north since recent times. An unfortunate incident was reported from the Kokaville area in Jaffna. A 2-year-old infant is now in the ICU of the Jaffna hospital after accidentally consuming methamphetamine, commonly referred to as ice. Many similar incidents have been reported from the north. A 14-year-old child overdosed on heroin in Jaffna recently. Another tragic incident was reported from the Vadamarachi area where 2 22-year-old females fell into a well and died. The post-mortem revealed that they were using ice right before the incident.
In the past few months within this year, like how many deaths were recorded due to drug abuse?
The last 6 months, there were 13 deaths were reported. It's directly related to drug abuse, especially heroin and ice. Here, most of the death related to after use of the drugs. They will get infections into the organs, especially infected endocarditis, it's infection in the heart. So mostly the age group is 20 to 35. So there are few cases less than that is the school going, especially the O level and A level, that age group. We suspect about 5 to 10% of the A level school children may have the risk of using these substances, especially heroin.
Drug distribution is also rampant in the Mana district, targeting school students.
That is happening in the poor areas, including Manas. These children, they go for work as part-time in the evenings as well as during weekends. So they work with the adults. So if the adult is addicted to some drugs, automatically these children, they are victimized and they are also learn this habit. So it depends what is the environment the school children are.
Drugs are mostly smuggled in the northern province by sea.
One might think, since Sri Lanka is surrounded by the Sea of Sri Lanka from all sides, that it poses a challenge to smugglers to bring drugs into this island. But however, the ingenuity and the malicious persistence of these smugglers have found new and inventive ways of smuggling drugs into our little island. On tomorrow's episode, we will investigate how these operations are conducted exactly. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Disal Kapuge reporting from Jaffna, along with our cameraman Mahinda Gamage.
Thank you, Disal, for that report. Moving on, another leg of the Turu Kapakaru project to preserve the environment for the future generations took place in Colombo on Thursday.
Turu Kapakaru is a project initiated by Lanka Private Limited and Newsfirst solely to preserve and protect the flora and fauna which make up the environment of Sri Lanka. Another leg of this program took place on Thursday at the Dudley Senanayake College in Colombo. Thursday's event took place with the participation of Juan Fernandez Jardon, a senior human rights advisor in the office of the resident coordinator in Sri Lanka.
Was the senior human rights advisor of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner of Human Rights, Mr. Juan Fernandez, for being here in his capacity.
The senior human rights advisor planted several tree plants at the event in line with the International Human Rights Day that will be commemorated on Saturday and the 74th anniversary of the United Nations. In addition, the Group Director of the Capital Maharaja Group, S.C. Veerasekara, and the Group Director for Human Resources, Suranga Jayalat, were among those present.
We are having the program at Dudley Senanayake School. This is to plant the saplings. What we are doing here is creating a foster guardian to protect a plant. We grow a plant here, but one of these students would become the foster guardian of that plant. And he or she will start protecting the plant until it grows. And then when they leave the school, they will hand over to the next generation. What we're doing right now is creating a mindset, creating the heartful affection towards the plant. Well, the prime objective of this is to make some relationship or communication between the kids and the nature. The majority of the disasters that we are facing today in the absence of trees, one is that the air pollution, other one is that floods, the earth slips, you name it, and it takes the life of everyone today.
The government of Iran carried out the first execution of a 23-year-old man linked to anti-government protests that have swept the country, in which hundreds of thousands of people have reportedly been killed by security forces. The protester was hanged to death after a trial before a revolutionary court that rights groups have condemned as a show trial.
Mohsen Shekhari was a 23-year-old Iranian who took to the streets of Tehran, joining the women-led wave of protests that was sparked off by the detention and death of Mahsa Amini. Allegedly blocking a main road in Tehran and stabbing a member of the Basij militia, Shekhari was accused of waging a war against God. Last morning, Iran announced its first execution of an accused protester. This state-sanctioned execution has sparked a flurry of condemnation from human rights groups around the world. Iranian Human Rights Agency passed that right throughout the trial, Shekhari was refused a lawyer. Mohsen Shekhari was hanged on Thursday morning after being found guilty by a revolutionary court. Has state-sanctioned violence been so normalized that it has begun to tolerate state-sanctioned murder? The hardline Fars news agency aired his forced confessions hours after his execution. In the video, a bruise on his right cheek is visible. State-sanctioned violence has dispersed throughout repressive states. What really happened in Iran for the situation to spiral out of control? Iran was governed by an extremely repressive, stringent system that led to the arbitrary arrest and murder of Mahsa Amini. In response, a wave of Iranians rose up against the government, and now, in order to protect the state and its authoritarian system, the government is stamping down rather harshly on protesters in violation of a series of human rights that seem to have been swept under the carpet. The Iranian state now justifies the actions carried out. And even though state repression might deter more and more protesters to end their struggle, repressive states run the risk of being isolated and ostracized by the international community and human rights watchdogs. So far, at least 475 protesters have been killed by security forces, and approximately 15,000 people have been sentenced to death for participating in protests.
That's all the news we've got for you tonight. I'm Charlotte Benedict with the Newsfirst team. Take care and God bless.